Gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I now introduce to you Dr. Bryan Wells, the NATO Chief Scientist, for his closing remarks for today's symposium. Dr. Wells is dual-hatted as the Senior Scientific Advisor to NATO leadership and the Chair of the NATO Science and Technology Board, in addition to running the Office of the Chief Scientist at NATO headquarters. Before his appointment as Chief Scientist, Dr. Wells was the UK Ministry of Defence's Head of Science and Technology Policy, Strategic Research, and International Engagement. Dr. Wells also served as the Chair of the European Defence Agency Research and Technology Steering Board. Dr. Wells, will you bring us home, sir?
Colonel, thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, dear colleagues, the title of today's symposium is up here, Empowering NATO's Technological Edge. I'd like to draw out 5 themes from today's symposium that has struck me as being the support pillars, as it were, for maintaining NATO's technological edge. The first is the geopolitical environment. Next, new types of warfare. Third is the evolution of science and technology and innovation. The fourth is maintaining our network of scientists and engineers. And finally, the factors of stability that I have heard over the course of the day. So, looking first at the geopolitical environment, the invasion by Russia of Ukraine is a turning point in European security, arguably one of the most important turning points that we've had since the end of the Second World War. We've seen NATO allies supporting Ukraine. We've seen a number of allies increasing their defence investment, including their investment in defence research and development. We've seen Finland and Sweden formally apply to join the alliance, and we've seen on our television screens the rate at which this process is being taken forward by leadership. Russia is now clearly an adversary. A number of allies had that opinion before the invasion of Ukraine, but there is no doubt about that now. China is a threat that challenges the rules-based order, and we've heard of the rise of their expenditure in research and the threat of takeovers of our small and medium-sized innovative enterprises. NATO 2030 set out an ambitious agenda across a wide range of NATO work, including reach out to the Asia-Pacific 4, the Republic of Korea, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand, as well as reaching out to international organisations, including the OECD. We've also got an ambitious agenda from NATO on climate change, and also taking forward the NATO-EU cooperation. The Ukraine invasion, and also reflecting on COVID-19, has shown the importance of resilience, and that includes the importance of supply chain resilience, which we've just recently been hearing about. At the Madrid summit, in only 2 weeks' time, a new strategic concept is set to be agreed by heads of state and government. This will be a key document for NATO. It is second only to the Washington Treaty in importance to the alliance. The last one was agreed in 2010. I think it is common ground amongst all of us that the intervening 12 years have been momentous for Euro-Atlantic security. So turning now from the geopolitical environment to the new types of warfare. It could be argued that Ukraine invasion is specific in many ways, not least the historical background, but also the geography. But it does remind us of the importance of manpower, of ammunition, of industrial capability. But we've also seen hybrid elements here, the disinformation, misinformation campaigns, the collaborative programme of work is looking at these. There's a symposium in Stockholm in the first week of October looking at the information environment. The NATO warfare capstone concept is a North Star for directing military thinking. It takes account of all perspectives and factors in the uncertainty of future warfare scenarios. But I think we can draw out some overarching conclusions from a technological perspective of the nature of current and future warfare. And I've highlighted 4 of these from today's discussion. The first is that technology will be a key driver of future warfare. Secondly, warfare will be multi-domain. NATO already has 5 official domains. Will it in due course have a 6th, be it called the human domain or the cognitive domain? Thirdly, future battle space capabilities will have the characteristics of being independent, integrated, distributed and digital. And finally, linked to that, the digital transformation of the alliance will be critical for its ability to conduct warfare in the future. So how do we see the evolution of science and innovation to support that vision of future warfare? In 2019, NATO's heads of state and government agreed an emerging and disruptive technology implementation strategy. They agreed on 7 emerging and disruptive technologies: AI, big data, autonomy, space, quantum, hypersonics and biotechnology. We've heard this afternoon that the civil investment in these areas quite considerably dwarfs the government investment in this area, which in turn considerably dwarfs the defence sector expenditure. So defence research no longer controls the scientific futures that we will see. We've also heard that that initial list of 7 has been augmented in NATO with novel materials, energy and propulsion taking the foreground. We've also heard that there is an increased emphasis on human factors, including psychology, psychiatry, our understanding of the functioning of the human brain as it undertakes cognitive activities. So human-machine interfaces will become increasingly important, and that brings issues such as issues of trust between man and machine, or indeed between machine and man. It also raises, as we've heard, ethical, legal and moral issues, particularly around the use of AI and the use of autonomous systems. But there are also significant developments in innovation within NATO and, as we've heard, within individual nations. And that's in governments, in industry and in academia. The relationship between the Science and Technology Organization and the Diana Accelerator will be a vital element of the future innovation landscape. CMRE is also already due to become a accelerator test center in the Diana network. The network of scientists can be able to develop challenges to input into Diana, and work is also underway in which challenges put to Diana can be evaluated by the scientists in the network. So we are looking at a rapidly developing and exciting picture in the innovation ecosystem. But to do that, we need to maintain the network of scientists and engineers that provide the backbone of our collaborative programme of work. I'll just highlight 2 areas that I heard today. The first is welcoming young scientists, early career scientists, is hugely important. It's partly demographics to refresh the network, but it's also bringing in fresh ideas from the younger generation. We've heard Al's passion on this subject. It's shared by myself and John Michael, and CMRE indeed also has a very impressive record of bringing in young scientists into its workforce. This is something that cannot be a one-off effort. It needs to be continuous to be successful, but it is something that I have really been impressed with today with the contributions from our young scientists. The second area that I've heard is the requirement for new skills or different skills in the network. Defence science evolves. It's no longer entirely physical science based. We need social scientists, we need political scientists, and we need to think imaginatively about what other disciplines we need to bring into the network to get the very best scientific advice to our military operators. And with that, I'd like to summarise what I've heard of elements of stability over the last 70 years. I'd highlight, first of all, NATO's commitment to defence and deterrence of its allies. Also, NATO's outreach to nations who follow the rules-based norms, and also international organisations such as OECD and the NATO-EU relationship. Another factor of stability is the intrinsic international nature of science. This is true whether it's civil science or defence science, government or private sector. And I would argue that the excellence of the network and the leadership in NATO S&T is another element of stability. We know as scientists that we can't turn science on and off like a switch or a tap. It requires years of investment, sometimes decades of investment. And I've really been struck by how the NATO network of scientists and its leadership have been far-sighted over the last 70 years. Collectively, we have been far-sighted, or more accurately, you have been far-sighted, so that NATO S&T has remained relevant to our military operators. John Michael and I, along with CMRE, owe the S&T leadership, who are our predecessors, a great debt of thanks for your foresight over the years. The current leadership is very much standing on the shoulders of giants, and rest assured that we, the current holders of our posts, are investing into the future for our own successors. And with that, I'd like to say a few words of thanks to various people in the room. First of all, thanks to OSCE for hosting this event and giving the remarkable surroundings here. Secondly, thanks to the speakers, panelists, and facilitators for their insights, and also to our Master of Ceremonies for keeping us nicely on time. I'd like to thank John Michael and the CSO team for this magnificent programme and meticulous organisation. Particular thanks to Deputy Director General Montocchio and his outstanding 70th anniversary team led by Major Kelly Phillips. And finally, thanks to you all for your time and commitment. It's in the best traditions of NATO S&T cooperation over the last 70 years. So thank you all very much indeed.